Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 42 of Be With Me. I'm titling this is a horrible podcast, and you'll see why. It is the phase 3 of the Roman trials of Jesus, and this is where he's beaten twice, he's crowned of thorns, it's decided against him, injustice is visibly done. Injustice is visibly done, not justice. And the prevailing voices of the Jewish leaders come to the fore. So I'm going to read first in Mark. This is Mark chapter 15, verse 6. Now at the feast, we're at the Passover. This is Good Friday. This is the morning of Good Friday. The sun is up, but it's early in the morning. Now at the feast, he used to release, this is Pilate, used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked. And among the rebels in prison who had committed murder in the insurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do as he usually did for them. And he answered them, saying, "Do you want me to release for you the King of the Jews?" For he perceived it was out of envy that the chief priests had delivered him up. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release for them Barabbas instead. And Pilate again said to them, "Then what shall I do with the man you call the King of the Jews?" And they cried out again, "Crucify him." And Pilate said to them, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Crucify him." So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. So let's talk about Barabbas first of all. Barabbas plays relatively large in this phase 3 time of Jesus being convicted. Now, Barabbas is described both here and in some of the other Gospels. Here are the words that are used for Barabbas. Notorious, amongst the rebels, a robber, and then here we find he's a murderer and an insurrectionist. And his name actually means son of the Father, which is a little bit of an irony to Jesus, who is son of the Father. But the visual irony of this is that they asked for Barabbas, not Jesus, to be released. So just think about this, as Barabbas is going to be walking around with them. They know he's a robber, a murderer, an insurrectionist, a notorious person, and a rebel, and he's the guy that they want. So it's insulting to Jesus that he does not compare well with Barabbas, number one. And number two, I just think that Barabbas served as a marker of what a bad decision this was, because they're all looking over their shoulder, wonder if he's going to murder somebody in your family or murder you. So number one thought of my day today is this Barabbas comparison. Secondly, we have to talk about the injustice. Now, it's not mentioned too much here in Mark, but in the Gospel of Luke, Pilate goes on and on and on about how innocent Jesus was. He says, not essentially, he says word for word that he's not guilty. Both Pilate said that, and he also quotes Herod as found him not guilty. He says he's done nothing deserving of death, and that he wanted to release Jesus. Get this, Pilate wanted to release Jesus, and asks what evil has he done, and then states that there's no guilt deserving of death. So in Luke, the theme that comes out, which I didn't read for you, but it's just the innocence of Jesus and the injustice is done. And then finally, we have to talk about scourging. Now, Jesus was beaten before he was convicted, and we'll talk about that probably tomorrow in another one of the Gospels. But we have to talk about the second beating that he gets in Mark 15, which I read for you. So Pilate, wishing to satisfy the crowd, did the three things. He released Barabbas, he scourged Jesus, and delivered him to be crucified. Now, scourging was usually associated with crucifixion. Many people died just from the scourging. It was absolutely brutal, delivered by, professional beating guys, the soldiers, and it is a judicial penalty consisting of a severe beating with a multi-lashed whip, which contained embedded pieces of bone and metal. In other words, it was a tool with the purpose to be as brutal as possible. So it's just a horrible thing. Many people's entrails would be exposed during this thing, and it was so horrible that Roman citizens were prevented from having this penalty done to them. So the readers of the Gospels would be familiar with this activity, and I think we need a little bit of a description because it's like unimaginable in our society. So why now? So why all this depth of suffering that is described in the Gospels? And I think we're even going to talk about it tomorrow. And I think the point is that the depth of suffering has to equal the depth of the problem, which is the problem of sin and how offensive it is, which has to equal the gloriousness of the remedy. And I think we need to sit with the suffering of Good Friday first, and it's sort of, in a way, attend the Good Friday service as unpalatable and as uncomfortable as it is. And keep in mind that Jesus, with his God part of him, could have stopped it at any time. He could have knocked these people down like he did in the Garden of Gethsemane and revealed his glory. So the endurance of this, as it goes on and it becomes more and more unpalatable, becomes more and more prominent. So this is a horrible podcast. I hope you have found it horrible. I'll see you tomorrow.